first responder mental issues to me, again, I've done both, but I've been raked over the coals for saying this.
They can
Um,
kiss our ass because I'm with you.
dude,
I already know where
dude,
you're going.
I've seen way more fucked up shit and been through more fucked up scenarios.
In a year.
Yeah, I'd say the problem is the difference with the military is most military, your fucked up things are a year long, right? They're deployments. You could go on multiple ones, but essentially you come home and they're in a little box and you deal with them that way. And they're a different type of PTSD. It's not the same. And I don't really want to compare one to the other or say one's worse because that's not true. There's a car accident PTSD,
Yeah.
sex assault PTSD. There's all kinds of. I'm just talking about the two I know or military deployment and first responder world. But the problem is that the first responder world, we have to deal with it on a daily basis. It doesn't go away. And you're
Right.
constantly like that box is open all the time. It's not closed off where you have a whiskey or two and you open it up and remember, you know, people who died. First responder stuff is every day. And until you retire.
Yeah. And it's the other part that I like to mention is the fact that when you deal with a trauma at work as a first responder versus the military, your mindset is when you're going to war, that's it. You're with your boys, like they're the rules of engagement, like there's all these different, like it's war. That's the mindset going into it. When I go to work as a first responder, I shouldn't be looking at it as these are enemies. These are everybody. It's a different mental toll just in assessing and the hypervigilance. Those are two different, in my opinion. When you show up, you could be dealing with somebody who you think's a victim, and then the next thing you know, that's the assailant. That is your suspect, and now you're fighting for your life or somebody else's life. And then you go to the next call, and it's this neighbor's bitching that the other neighbor's trash can's over on their side of the driveway.
Yeah, a lot of it's the stress of the job, and one of the stressors is having to go up and down like that, like you just said. Like
Yes.
I, I've been, I've had days, I have days constantly where you have your gun out pointing at another human being, right? Going through that mental, like, are you ready to pull this trigger? And your life after that, your life. I've never discharged my gun at my in the 7 years of being a cop, but I could, but every time I pull it out, you're going through like, what's it going to be like when this happens? Because, it could happen right now. And then you holster it and then you go to the old lady who's mad that her neighbor's grass is growing over hers. And it's
Yeah.
like going back and forth and up
Yeah.
and down and call to call, and then God forbid you knife hand this old lady for being an idiot. You're in trouble because you're
Yeah.
still hyped up on the last call.
Yep. Yeah. And it takes good supervisors to know, if you just see the dead baby call or, whatever it
Yeah.
is, good supervisor is going to step in and be like, hey, you need to go home for the day. Like, and assess and hopefully your supervisors know you well enough that they can make that call for you. But there's that whole cultural thing with us as cops is like, if I leave, my boys and girls that I work with are going to have to pick up my slack.
Wow, yeah, that's a sad thing, but it's a true thing is that we have that mindset.
Yeah. And for me, that is a tough pill to swallow because why did we sign up for this job? I think the very root of anybody being a cop is to help in general. You may have your own windows of I want to be SWAT. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to, somebody was killed by a DWI in my family and I want to get DWIs or whatever it is. But at the very base root is you want to help people. And then here we are, the people that depend on us the most and could have to save our lives or we got to save their lives or whatever it is. Now we're cutting out when everything we tell each other in the military and in the police world is suck it up. There's calls.
Yeah.
There's calls that got to be shagged. Like
There's always calls holding.
there's always calls holding. I try to tell people when I show up to work, it is no thing for there to be 15 to 30 calls sitting on the sheet.
Yeah, and just to go back to the stress, I was thinking the other day, I was cleaning out my car, my patrol car, at a gas station in the middle of the day, and I kept, I realized, holy fuck, I'm worried that someone's gonna come and plug me while I'm cleaning out my car.
Oh,
There is no downtime unless you are on your department's property in a gated facility or indoors.
yeah,
You are never safe, and that used to not be a thing. I don't think as much as random slayings of law enforcement officers just because. Um, but you can't even clean out your car anymore without having to be hyper vigilant about someone plugging you from behind. It is what it is.
yeah. And me personally, I've worked property crimes the last 4 years, so I've worked on a specialized unit, and we deal with buybacks and buy busts and all this stuff. And jugging is a big thing. It's a terminology that a lot of people, regular civilians, probably never even heard of. And for those listening, jugging is basically we'll do the simple one. You're at your gas pump and you go to pump. Meanwhile, homeboy's sneaking up to your passenger side door, either taking your shit or waiting for you to be distracted some other way. And they're taking your stuff out of there, and then you take off and have no idea your purse is missing or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a form of jugging. Now it gets more complicated. There are other versions of it, but that's the simplest one. And that's where the hypervigilance for me comes from. I'll be sitting at the pump and I'm double checking to make sure I locked my doors, so you can't pull the handle on the other side of my vehicle. I drive a truck, so I'm Texas, so you got to drive a truck. And that's a hypervigilance specifically caused from my work.